Chris's personas were an invaluable tool, and in programmes like Brass Eye, he became increasingly interested in exposing the hypocrisies of the media. He was asking questions that most people wouldn't dare to. Matthew Bannister.
The last time I saw him was when he was working on the film Four Lions. And I said to him, "What are you doing at the moment?" And he said, "Well, I'm feeling slightly nervous because I've been going undercover with Muslim extremists." And so, and I believed him. You know, I mean, maybe he was putting the wool over my eyes, but he seemed to be talking sense, and it makes sense given all that we know about the kind of levels of research that he goes into for his programmes. And he was obviously taking risks with his own safety in order to pursue what some people might call comedy. And that shows a certain amount of zeal, doesn't it? I mean, it shows a certain amount of fearlessness, and it shows a certain amount of commitment. And there are a few people who would take those risks in order to pursue what's loosely called entertainment. But I don't think it is entertainment. You know, I think it is something of a mission. It's a mission to expose the mainstream media as not giving you the real picture. He's fearless about the targets that he takes on because I think he has a sort of morality that drives him, a sort of code inside him that says, this is outrageous. Let me show it to be outrageous. And the very act of me showing it to be outrageous exposes the hypocrisy, because there'll be a huge debate about whether I can do it at all. And that exposes the way in which the media works, and it exposes the fact that there are people trying to censor you from seeing and hearing things. And I think that's the tip that he's on. So I think there is a serious message going on underneath all of this, which makes him even more admirable in my view.
Paul Garner.
But there is always a sense of enjoyment about it, a sense that this is fun more than it is kind of critical. This is, and I remember vividly him on the night that we filmed the drugs hit on All Saints Road for Brass Eye, and we all met. Earlier in that day, I'd filmed a bit on a muck heap out the back of Peter Fincham's house, where I was rolling around on a muck heap shouting "Torch," which is Czech for cake, and that ended up being the footage that they showed to the members of Parliament, and they got it read out in Parliament. But anyway, later that night, Chris was getting ready to go and do the hit where he had a space opera on his head, and he was going up to real drugs dealers on All Saints Road. And I know how I felt before I went out and did something for him, which was a kind of quivering but determined. He had absolutely no fear whatsoever. I mean, he was sitting there watching, I think The Simpsons or something was on the telly, and we were sitting watching that, and he was strapping 2 copies of something like Marie Claire to his chest underneath his shirt in case he got stabbed. And not a flicker. He wasn't even mentioning the fact that he was taping 2 copies of a thick magazine to his chest whilst having a laugh watching The Simpsons with a space opera on his head.
Things that would occur to other people, like, I could get in trouble for this, don't occur to him.
Peter Bainham.
Chris doesn't have that part of him where he will be embarrassed about saying something completely insane to somebody in the street, you know, and today we're talking about spherical cattle, and that gives him, you know, it's an absolute steely, in the moment, a steely quiet confidence where he'll just say, today we're talking about spherical cattle, and there's nobody around, there's no backup, there's nobody there with a boom, or it's just him with a microphone in those days, and there's no crew, and I think maybe he's just been doing it for such a long time that he'll do that the same way I'll go and buy coffee. You know, and that fearlessness will stay with him then when he'll do something much crazier, and then he will. I remember with the Michael Heseltine thing. You know, he won't worry at all really about the effect of it, and then he'll find it ridiculous and preposterous. He'll find the response preposterous. He doesn't have a fear of authority at all.
That Heseltine thing got Chris splashed across the papers back in 1994 and suspended from Radio 1 for 2 weeks. Here's the former controller of Radio 1, Matthew Bannister.
Chris explained to me that what he was trying to do was to satirised the practice of pre-recording obituaries in advance. And this is something that all broadcasting organisations do, and that newspapers have pre-written obituaries in case someone famous dies. And obviously that involves a certain amount of artifice, because people give interviews to these obituary programmes on the understanding they're not going to be broadcast till the subject is dead, and paying tribute to them in a fulsome way. So Chris wanted to reveal what he saw as yet another piece of media hypocrisy. And, of course, he picked on somebody who had recently had a heart attack, Michael Heseltine, because, again, he likes to twist the knife in the wound. He likes to pick on the sore spot, to take off the scab, to choose a target that is particularly sensitive for all concerned. And so he played me some pre-recorded inserts, in one of which he got an MP called Jerry Hayes to pay tribute to Michael Heseltine, but he also broadcast the bit before the tribute where Jerry Hayes is saying, right, what are we up to here? What's going on? And he said, oh, this is a tribute to Michael Heseltine. Oh, right. And then he adopts a serious voice and does the tribute to Michael Heseltine in that voice.
What I'm doing is I'm just collecting comments about Michael Heseltine.
Yes.
Because it's my job to be in charge of the obit tapes.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
I've got to update them.
Are you serious, Pat?
Yeah, I am.
Gee whiz.
Basically, anyone who's over 55, I've got to go around and just update them.
What can I say, for God's sake?
I don't know. I'm just asking people if they can say what they can say about, Michael Heseltine for that tape, which will obviously be broadcast.
I'll happily do it. Can I pop in tomorrow and do it?
Why, do you just want time to think about it?
No, do it off the top of my head.
Okay, well, could you do it now?
Yeah, of course I can. And do you want me to do it in the he was?
I suppose so, yeah.
I have to.
Yeah. So you can just give us a few words about Michael Heseltine.
Right. How long?
15 seconds?
15 seconds. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll do it now.
Yeah.
Michael Heseltine was a truly great parliamentarian, a beast of the jungle. And what's more, he got things done. One of the few politicians on the front bench, any front bench, who had real charisma and rose from the political dead so many times. He had probably had more farewells than Frank Sinatra.
And I suppose he deserved every one of them.
He deserved every one.
So what will you miss about him?
Well, I'll miss the man. I'll miss the individual. I'll miss a great politician.
And I suppose it's a sad day today, but is there anything that can alleviate that?
In politics, it's not just the boring drudgery. It is the excitement. It is being a beast of the jungle. It's being a true politician that really can win you through. And for that, Michael Heseltine is a great example to us all.
Or was it? Could you just say that again? Was a great example to us all? For that, Michael Heseltine.
And for that, Michael Heseltine was a great example to us all.
And I suppose every beast of the jungle has to come to an end sometime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pat, that's appalling.
Well, I'm just saying,
I know.
It just has to be...
I know.
I suppose all great people like, Aslam in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, even he had to come to an end.
Yeah.
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 Okay, Jerry, well, thanks a
Okay,
lot.
Pat.
Cheers.
Cheers, matey.
Bye-bye.
And he also played me an interview that he'd done with Bruce Foxton, the bass player of The Jam, where he, obviously a mystified Bruce Foxton, is asked what he thinks about news of the death of Michael Heseltine. And again, he was satirising the habit of the media of calling up any old person who happens to be passing when they get news of a death and just asking them what they think about it, even though they're not the right person to comment.
Bruce Foxton, any thoughts on the death of Michael Heseltine?
Sorry?
The death of Michael Heseltine, any thoughts? Mean anything to you?
To be honest with you, I didn't know he died.
Ah, well...
When did he die?
This afternoon.
Really?
So...
Good, I haven't had any TV
hit the ground
on or
screaming.
anything.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's obviously sad when anybody dies, actually.
I
What
suppose
was it, another heart attack?
he was around throughout the time the Jam were playing and indeed breaking up.
Mm.
How would you assess him, I suppose?
Well, wow, it's a bit of a question to answer. I would say probably that he seemed to stick to his guns. He seemed very determined and strong-willed man.
Which of your bass lines would you say would be a suitable sort of lament?
That's entertainment, but it's not really...
Sorry?
That's entertainment, maybe.
Right. So something with harmonics in it, like down in the tube station, probably be a little bit frivolous and inappropriate.
Mm.
Yeah. So you'd stick with That's Entertainment.
Yeah.
And would you play that slower? and softer than on the record?
Now, when I listened carefully to both of those, it seemed to me that it was okay for them to be broadcast because nobody actually said Michael Heseltine has died. You know, there was talk of around it, but nobody actually said he had died. So I said to Chris, okay, we can do this as long as you never say on the air Michael Heseltine has died, because obviously that would be very upsetting for his family and it would be untrue. OK, Matthew, no problem. So then I got in the car to go home and switched on the Chris Morris show to listen with some trepidation. And I heard him say at the beginning,
"This is BBC Radio 1 FM, and if there is any news of the death of Michael Heseltine in the next hour, we'll let you know."
And I thought, oh, no. And, of course, as soon as I got through the door, there were no mobile phones in those days. My phone was ringing off the hook because the BBC newsroom had a call from 10 Downing Street to say, is it true that Michael Heseltine has died? And, of course, I had to say, no, obviously Michael Heseltine hasn't died. And then I had to think very quickly about what to do about this. And it was clear that Chris had overstepped the mark completely. And 10 Downing Street issued a statement rather helpfully saying, it's not true that Michael Heseltine's died, he's in Manchester. And then I had, there was a hue and cry in the newspapers, and of course I had to take some action, and I thought, well, the only action I can take here, I'm going to suspend Chris for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to make him pre-record the programme in future so that we can vet it. I won't let him do any live broadcasting again.
When Matthew told me this story, I couldn't resist asking him, why didn't you sack him?
Well, because he's one of the greatest talents working in British broadcasting. So I was proud of 99.999% of what Chris Morris did on my radio station. And I still think that the shows that I commissioned from him are the shows I am most proud of having commissioned, of anything that I've ever commissioned, and I've commissioned a lot, because they represent a leap forward in the medium of radio. And nobody else before or since has achieved anything like it. So I wasn't about to sack him just because he broke a few rules. I wanted to keep him on my radio station. I was proud to have him there.
I don't even think it was my favourite thing it was the thing that got headlines. But of all the things we did, to me that felt like the most radio equivalent of running up to somebody's doorbell and running away laughing. I think there was some ones that I liked more.
Armando Iannucci.
There was something about, especially his stuff, which was very much, you kind of wanted to sneak it on. You kind of wanted as few people in the British Broadcasting Corporation to know anything about it until it went out. There are certain subjects that you can't treat in a comic way, but you can treat in a dramatic way. That Chris and I both kind of disagreed with that, because drama is entertainment. So you're allowed to be entertaining about, a train crash in a drama, but you're not allowed to be entertaining about a train crash in a comedy. No, it's not that we're saying this is entertaining. It's just saying, comedy allows you a different way to look at the subject. It's asking you to think about how these things are presented, how they're edited, how they're projected out, these playing with people's emotions. And I think it probably also was knowingly not taboo, but it was certainly an area that was done in we knew we hadn't heard anything like that before in a comedy show.